Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a really focused look at the Uncommon Schools model.
Mm-hmm.
This is a charter network, and they've got this strong reputation,
Mm-hmm.
consistently high-achieving students, teachers, schools.
Right. Really consistent results.
So our goal today is to kind of pinpoint the key principles behind that effectiveness. We're looking especially at their methods for teaching, for training their educators, and how they set those famously high expectations.
Yeah, both academic and behavioral expectations. It's a big part of their model.
Exactly.
And we've gathered a bunch of resources, all tied back to the Uncommon Schools network somehow.
Okay.
So you'll find practical guides in here on using data, leadership strategies, how they coach new teachers, and also that big book, Teach Like a Champion.
Ah, right. Heard a lot about that one.
Yeah. So for you listening, this is really about getting a clear, thorough understanding of a successful educational approach, but, without getting lost in all the weeds.
It's like a shortcut to the core ideas.
Exactly. We want to uncover those crucial insights, the things that seem to make the real difference in how they operate.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's jump right in then. One thing that really leaps out from all these sources is the massive emphasis on data-driven instruction, DDI.
Oh, absolutely. It's more than just like collecting test scores.
Right. It feels like they built their whole instructional model around it.
Yeah, one source actually calls Uncommon Schools a laboratory for honing DDI over like the last 20 years.
Wow, okay. A laboratory.
And what's really insightful is how they define a rigorous assessment. It's not just hard questions.
It's about crafting questions that genuinely show if a student has mastered the material.
Precisely. For multiple choice, they say rigor comes from the quality of the wrong answers, the distractors, and how complex the text is.
Okay.
And for open-ended questions, it's all about the exemplar, that clear model answer that shows what real understanding looks like.
That makes sense. And they even tackle that argument you hear sometimes, right? That standardized tests don't really measure learning.
Yeah, they have a nuanced take. They sort of say, well, okay, some tests might not capture everything,
Sure.
but well-designed, rigorous questions, those absolutely can assess a student's grasp of concepts.
But the real power isn't just in those big tests, is it? It's more frequent.
Exactly. It's their use of interim assessments. Think of these less like a final exam and more like regular checkups.
Health checks for learning.
Kind of, yeah. They happen pretty often 4 to 6 times a year. Crucially, no more than 8 weeks apart.
Ah, so you're not waiting months to find out there's a problem.
Right. The analogy they use is it's a physical for learning, not an autopsy. It's about catching things early enough to intervene. Timely intervention is key.
I like that. A physical, not an autopsy.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just those interim assessments. They also really stress analyzing actual student work every single week.
Every week. Wow.
Yeah, it's this continuous feedback loop, constant monitoring.
Okay, but with all that data, interim assessments, weekly work analysis,
Hmm.
how do they not just drown in numbers? How do they make it manageable?
That's a great question. The effective schools, the sources say, are really focused in their analysis. Uncommon uses these structured data meetings,
Okay.
usually led by the principal or maybe a trained instructional leader. And the process is quite specific.
How so?
Well, they start by celebrating successes, which is important.
Right.
But then, critically, they look at the learning standard and the exemplar answer first.
Before looking at the student mistakes.
Exactly. You establish the goal, what excellence looks like, before you dive into where the kids struggled.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Define the target first.
Right. Then they identify those specific gaps in the student work and plan out how they're going to reteach those specific concepts.
And they have tools for this, like templates.
Yeah, we saw examples like one from North Star Clinton Hill Middle School, templates designed to make the analysis efficient, streamline the process.
So it's systematic.
Very. And it all ties into this bigger strategy, something like called the Data-Driven Instruction Monthly Map.
The monthly map.
Yeah, it integrates assessment planning, the data analysis meetings we just talked about, and even the teacher professional development related to it.
So it connects all the dots.
Right. And for schools that are really struggling, this whole DDI approach isn't just like one tool in the toolbox. It's presented as the core turnaround strategy.
The main engine for improvement.
Pretty much, emphasizing really disciplined implementation of that monthly plan.
It sounds incredibly coordinated. The assessment schedules, the lesson plans, the curriculum, it all has to align.
Absolutely. Even how teachers monitor work in class follows a structure. They mention this sequence. Pen to paper, annotation strategies, and right answers.
So a specific way to watch students work.
And what's really telling is they even have a data-driven instruction and assessment implementation rubric.
A rubric for the whole process.
Yeah, so schools can basically assess themselves on how well they're actually doing DDI.
And if they find gaps in their implementation.
Then the follow-up is planned. Targeted reteaching, maybe using modeling or guided discussions, and these focused 6-week action plans to provide different kinds of support for students who need it.
Okay, so data is clearly foundational, huge. But great instruction needs strong leadership too, right?
Definitely. The sources talk a lot about leadership. Leverage leadership comes up as a key resource.
Leverage leadership, what's the core idea there?
It's really about leaders being super intentional about where they spend their time and energy, choosing the actions that have the biggest impact on student learning.
Prioritizing the things that really move the needle.
Exactly, moving the needle. And the book focuses on leadership actions that are replicable and repeatable, things you can do consistently.
So not just theory, but concrete actions. What are these levers they talk about?
There are 7 key ones. 4 are instructional, data-driven instruction.
Okay, that's covered, yeah.
Right. Then planning, observation and feedback, and professional development.
Okay, the instructional core.
And then 3 cultural levers: student culture, staff culture, and managing school leadership teams. It's a whole school framework.
And it's meant to be practical, like step by step.
Yeah, explicitly called a practical guide. Lots of how-tos, which leaders probably appreciate.
I bet. Now for coaches, or people focused just on instruction, do they narrow that focus?
Yes. The sources suggest that for coaches, the highest leverage points are DDI, no surprise there, and observation and feedback.
Why those two specifically?
The thinking is that those two have the most direct and immediate impact on helping teachers get better, faster, empowering teachers.
Okay, going back to assessment, setting the bar for rigor. There was that analogy about hikers.
Oh, yeah. Comparing hiding the assessment to, like, not telling hikers which mountain peak they're supposed to climb.
Right. It just highlights how crucial it is for teachers to know exactly what the end goal is. Clarity, transparency.
Absolutely. Teachers need to know the target to guide their students effectively.
Makes total sense.
And to help with that and save time, Uncommon actually encourages sharing successful interim assessments within their network.
Oh, interesting. So schools don't have to create everything from scratch.
Right. Why reinvent the wheel if another school in the network has already built a great aligned assessment? Share the good stuff.
Fosters collaboration.
Yeah.
Smart. Okay, let's talk about that other key lever for coaches, observation and feedback. The sources say leaders spend a lot of time on this.
A significant amount, yeah. It's seen as maybe the primary engine for teacher growth.
And they have a specific way of doing it, a protocol.
It's structured around see it, name it, do it.
See it, name it, do it. Okay, break that down.
So see it is observing the practice. Name it is identifying the specific thing the teacher should work on, the highest leverage action step. And do it is practicing that specific skill right there in the feedback meeting.
Practicing during the meeting.
Yes. It's not just talk.
No.
And before the meeting, the leader prepares, gets tools ready, plans the feedback during the observation itself.
And the meeting structure, is that
Yeah.
specific too?
Very. Start by acknowledging success, something positive. Then clearly identify the model, what great looks like, and pinpoint the gap between that model and what was observed.
Okay, see the gap.
Then plan concrete practice activities. Actually practice the skill, maybe starting simple, then getting more complex. And crucially, schedule follow-up to check on implementation.
Accountability built in.
And a big part of this is crafting great action steps. They need to be highest leverage, measurable, and really bite-sized.
Bite size, meaning
Meaning small enough that a teacher can realistically practice and implement it quickly, like within a week. If it's too big, it won't stick.
right, manageable steps.
Yeah.
Now, during class time, during independent work, they mention monitor aggressively. That sounds intense.
It is active. It's not just wandering around. It means using a seating chart strategically.
Okay.
Checking in first with the students who finish fastest because they might reveal common misunderstandings early. Constantly comparing student work against the exemplar answer, looking for patterns, tracking responses, even marking up student work in hand with a coding system.
Wow, real-time marking and coding.
Yeah, to note strengths and weaknesses right there.
And what about questioning? Any specific techniques there?
Several. Things like rollback, where you push a student to explain their thinking more deeply, using universal prompts to get more students involved or elaborate, And closing the loop.
Closing the loop.
Yeah, going back to a student who gave an incorrect answer earlier after more discussion or explanation to give them a chance to revise their thinking.
Giving them another shot. Nice.
And it's not just about the teacher asking questions. They explicitly teach and model habits of discussion for the students themselves.
So students learn how to have good academic conversations.
Exactly. And there's a real stress on students verbalizing their conceptual understanding, not just spitting back facts, and upgrading their vocabulary using more precise academic language.
Okay, this all points to very intentional teacher development. What about the more formal professional development sessions? PD days.
The main principle there seems to be make every single minute count. No wasted time.
We've all been in PDs that felt like wasted time.
Right. So their model builds on that feedback idea. See it, name it, do it, reflect.
Letting reflect at the end.
And they really emphasize presenters rehearsing their PD sessions, making sure they're tight, organized, impactful.
Their preparation.
And that do-it phase in PD, it's very hands-on, clear what to do instructions, and then dedicated time for teachers to actually practice the new strategy.
Practice during the PD.
Yes. And maybe even doing it again to really lock it in. Repetition helps.
It sure does.
And then that final piece, reflect. Giving teachers dedicated time within the PD to process what they learned and think about how they'll use it, that's often missed.
That reflection time is key for making it stick. Okay, so we've covered data, leadership, feedback, PD. What about school culture? That came up as a lever too.
Right, foundational. They state pretty clearly that cultural systems are the foundation on which students develop virtuous action.
Strong statement. How do they build that student culture?
It's a process. Find a model. What do you want routines and behavior to look like? Then identify the gap between that ideal and the current reality.
See the gap again.
Including looking at ineffective actions by students, teachers, and leaders that contribute to the gap. And then craft these super detailed minute-by-minute action plans to systematically build the culture you want.
Minute-by-minute plans for culture. That's specific.
Very specific. And for staff culture, the takeaway is culture is what you see, not just what you hope for or write in a mission statement.
It's the day-to-day reality.
Exactly. So consistently and swiftly upholding expectations for staff behavior is critical. But importantly, that accountability always comes paired with continuous support. High expectations, high support.
A balance. Okay, and managing leadership teams. That was another lever.
Yeah, this is about building leadership capacity beyond just the principal. They talk about leveraging strong teachers, developing them into instructional leaders.
Teacher leaders.
Right. Aiming for a ratio of about 1 leader for every 12 teachers.
So more people providing that observation and feedback.
Exactly. More eyes, more support. They even suggest a 3-hour rule as a rough time commitment for these teacher leader roles.
3 hours a week. Or day.
Per week, likely, dedicated to those leadership tasks. And the principal's role shifts a bit. They focus more on observing the leader's practice, reviewing the feedback they give, planning data meetings with them.
So the principal coaches the coaches.
In a sense, yeah. It frees the principal up to focus more on the bigger picture of learning and instruction across the school.
Okay, strategic development of leadership.
Yeah.
Now let's shift to new teachers. There's a specific focus on them, right? Getting them better faster.
Yes, exactly that phrase, get better faster. It implies real urgency and a very targeted approach to coaching rookies.
What are the core coaching principles for new teachers?
They're pretty direct. Go granular, focus on small, specific skills. Plan the coaching carefully. Provide lots of opportunities for practice. Follow up consistently. Repeat the cycle. And make feedback more frequent.
More frequent feedback for newbies. Makes sense.
And they use video a lot, recordings of effective teaching as models.
Seeing what it looks like.
And a big emphasis on teachers practicing new skills outside the live classroom first, rehearsing before performing.
Safe practice space.
Right. And then consistent real-time feedback during actual lesson.
Giving feedback right in the moment. How does that work without disrupting the class?
They stress picking the right moment, prioritizing student learning and the lesson flow. It's a nuanced skill for the coach. Sometimes it's a quick nonverbal signal, sometimes a very brief whisper, sometimes you wait.
Okay. And is there a sequence for what skills to teach new teachers?
Yes, they actually have a get better, faster scope and sequence. It helps coaches identify the single highest leverage action step for that teacher at that moment.
So, prioritizing again. What else is in the toolkit for new teachers?
Things like developing teacher radar, proactively scanning the room to spot off task behavior early, using whole class resets effectively. And the importance of the teacher writing the exemplar for independent practice, that sets the bar for excellence and makes monitoring easier and more effective.
Connects back to the assessment rigor piece.
Exactly. They also push a write first, talk second approach.
Write first, talk second.
Yeah, have all students grapple with the question or task individually on paper before launching into pair shares or class discussions. Ensures everyone thinks independently first.
Avoid some students just echoing others.
Right. And that aggressive monitoring we talked about earlier, that period of independent work becomes a critical time for the teacher to give high-quality, targeted feedback to students.
Okay. Any other techniques mentioned for coaching new teachers?
Yeah, things like narrate the positive, publicly praising students who are meeting expectations, creating little challenges to boost engagement, using countdowns effectively for pacing.
Keeping things moving.
Strategies for engaging all students, like cold calling, which we'll probably touch on more, and turn-in talks. And that whole see it, name it, do it framework, that applies directly to coaching actions too.
So the coach might model a technique or plan practice with the teacher or give real-time feedback on specific things.
Exactly. Feedback on things like using a strong voice or specific questioning techniques or running classroom routines smoothly or checking for understanding effectively. Very targeted coaching.
Okay, that brings us nicely to the actual teaching techniques themselves. Many seem to come from Teach Like a Champion.
Yes, that book codifies a lot of these specific moves. One huge concept is ratio.
Ratio, like math.
Not exactly. It's about maximizing the number of students who are thinking hard for the maximum amount of time.
Okay, maximizing thinking time.
2 types. Participation ratio, getting more kids actively involved, and think ratio, deepening the cognitive work they're doing.
Got it. And cold call is a big one, right? Calling on students whether their hand is up or not.
Definitely a hallmark. The key is making it warm, inclusive, predictable, timing when you say the student's name, breaking down questions, asking follow-ups.
Doesn't that stress kids out?
Well, they emphasize rolling it out carefully with a speech explaining why they do it. It's about hearing everyone's ideas, keeping everyone ready, making it positive and expected.
Okay, the rollout matters.
And they suggest if you're worried about kids getting answers wrong publicly in a cold call, you can use turn-in talks beforehand for them to rehearse or check their understanding with a partner.
Using turn-in talks as a scaffold.
Exactly. Turn-in talk itself is seen as great for energy and discussion, but you have to teach listening skills explicitly and use techniques like managed turns so it doesn't just become noise.
Managed turns.
Yeah, structuring how students take turns speaking within the pair and timing the turn-in talk while hitting the crest of the wave when energy and thinking are high.
Crest of the wave. I like that. What about starting class?
The do now routine. An immediate academic task students start the moment they walk in. Efficient start. Followed by a focused review of previous material using selective neglect.
Selective neglect, meaning don't review everything.
Right. Address the most important errors or concepts. Don't get bogged down in every minor mistake from the homework, for instance.
Okay. What else stands out from Teach Like a Champion?
Face reading techniques for making reading aloud more expressive and meaning-focused. Minimizing the transaction cost, the awkward pauses when switching readers.
Transitions.
Yeah. The power of really clear, concrete, what-to-do directions, using nonverbal cues effectively, and strong voice.
Strong voice, like yelling.
No, not at all. It's about economy of language, using different registers, casual, formal, urgent appropriately, communicating clearly and calmly to manage behavior and give direction.
Okay, clarity and presence.
Also, things like assume the best, interpreting student actions charitably, and positive phrasing corrections or redirections positively, both build relationships.
Changes how you see the classroom.
Definitely. And lots on checking for understanding, techniques like show call.
Show call.
Yeah, selecting a piece of student work, maybe one with a common error, and displaying it for the class to analyze constructively, normalizing mistakes as learning opportunities.
Building a culture of error.
Exactly. Delaying revealing the right answer to get more thinking out there first. And the idea of right is right.
Right.
Means holding a high bar for correctness, giving honest feedback, acknowledging effort, sure, but not accepting partially correct answers as fully correct. maintaining standards.
High expectations again.
Always. Then there are stretch it techniques, pushing students beyond the correct answer to think more deeply, asking how or why or asking for another way to solve it.
Deepening the thinking.
And a focus on sentence formation or oracy, the ability to express oneself clearly through speech. And of course, tons on routines and procedures for smooth classroom management. It's very comprehensive.
Wow. Okay, so pulling this all together, the Uncommon Schools model really seems like this intricate but coherent system.
It really does. You see how the pieces connect. That strong foundation in data-driven instruction.
Right.
A leadership approach focused on high-impact replicable actions.
The lovers.
That intensive observation and feedback cycle for teachers.
See it, name it, do it.
Targeted PB, that dual focus on building both student and staff culture.
Can't forget the adults.
Strategically managing leadership teams that really focus coaching for new teachers.
Sharper, faster.
And it's all reinforced and brought to life by those specific, concrete teaching techniques like the ones in Teach Like a Champion.
It feels like the consistent application of all these things working together is what creates that environment of, well, both high expectations and really robust support.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And that combination seems key to how they develop, great students and great educators consistently.
Right. The whole system is geared towards that.
Which leads us, I guess, to a final thought for you listening in. As we've unpacked all these different principles and practices from the Uncommon Schools model, just consider which of these ideas, or maybe which combination of them, might be most applicable or just, intriguing in your own world, whether that's education or maybe a totally different field where development and achievement are the goals.
What resonates? What sparks an idea?
Exactly. What piece of this detailed approach makes you think, maybe there's something there I could explore further, something to mull over.